It was the night of June 26th, 2016. After a long evening out, Dishit Jariwala returned home with his wife. Both of them were exhausted, so they began preparing to sleep without wasting any time. Just as they were heading toward the bedroom, Dishit suddenly remembered that he had forgotten to switch off the parking lights. He quickly went downstairs to turn them off. A small, routine task, or so it seemed. But no one could have guessed that this simple decision would turn out to be the most dangerous one of his life. Moments later, the Surat Police Control Room received a call. The caller sounded panicked. Dishit Jariwala had been murdered. At first, the case appeared to be a straightforward murder. But as the investigation progressed and layer after layer unfolded, it became clear that this wasn't just about one man's death. The people involved had other reasons behind their actions. Let's dive deep into the case of Dishit Jariwala, a case as shadowed as it is shocking, where every truth hides another. 23-year-old Dishit Jariwala was a well-known textile mill owner in Surat. He lived in a spacious bungalow located in the posh neighborhood of Sargam society. Interestingly, Dishit's uncle and his family also lived in the same bungalow, but both families had separate entrances. So while the bungalow was one, it had two distinct entryways, one for Dishit's family and the other for his uncle's. Dishit was known to be a very caring and obedient person. He respected his parents deeply and followed their every word. Not only was he doing well in business, but he also took excellent care of his family. Soon, his family decided it was time for him to get married because he was doing well in life and had grown into a responsible young man. Dishit, too, agreed with their decision at the time. And so, in January 2013, he married a beautiful and intelligent young woman named Vels, who was only 20 years old at the time of the marriage. Not only was Dishit's family happy, but Vels' family, too, was overjoyed with the marriage. They felt proud that Vels had married into such a well-respected household. On the other side, Dishit's family was thrilled because he had truly taken a liking to Vels. Vels gradually began to blend into the Jariwala family. Since it was an arranged marriage, Dishit and Vels didn't know each other very well in the beginning. But both of them were making efforts to get closer and understand each other better. They frequently went out to different restaurants, spent quality time together, and genuinely worked on building their connection. With time, the couple began to grow closer. While there were probably some initial difficulties, as is common in arranged marriages, both Vels and Dishit were doing their best to make the relationship work. A few months into their marriage, once they had begun to understand each other better, they shared the good news with their families about Vels' pregnancy. In 2014, Vels became pregnant and later gave birth to a beautiful baby girl. They named her Fiona. The news filled the entire family with joy. Dishit's parents were elated to see their son's small family growing, and Dishit himself was deeply moved and overjoyed at becoming a father. Dishit and his family were happy with their lives. Time flew by, and little Fiona had now grown to be about a year and a half old. After her birth, the Jariwala family gradually settled back into their daily routines. Vels and her mother-in-law stayed busy caring for Fiona, while Dishit and his father became increasingly occupied with their textile business. It was a normal life for them, steady, peaceful, and full of contentment. On June 26, 2016, Monday, Dishit's parents left for a vacation in Mauritius. Vels, who had been wanting to visit her parents for some time, finally had a free day and decided it was the perfect opportunity to go see them. Around 9 a.m., she left for her parental home, taking Fiona with her. Meanwhile, Dishit left for work and headed to his office. While spending time at her parents' place, Vels remembered that the housemaid was supposed to come at 11 a.m. So, reportedly, she returned home briefly around that time, attended to things, and then went back to her parents' house. Later that evening, after finishing his work, Dishit went to pick up his wife and daughter. They had dinner together at her parents' home, and by around 11 p.m., the three of them returned to their own house. But around that same time, inside the Sargam society, a rickshaw carrying two unfamiliar men was seen circling near Dishit's house. It was a highly unusual sight for that neighborhood, and it didn't go unnoticed. The rickshaw driver kept asking the two men where he was supposed to drop them off. But instead of giving a location, they simply told him, "Just keep circling around here." This struck the rickshaw driver as a little odd, but he didn't think much of it, as similar things had happened before. Still, something about this time felt different. Around 11 p.m., a silver Honda Jazz passed by. As soon as they saw it, one of the passengers told the rickshaw driver to follow that car. The Honda Jazz pulled into the parking lot of a bungalow and stopped. 3 people stepped out of the car: a man, a woman, and a little girl. It was clearly Dishit, Vels, and their daughter Fiona. After entering the house, Dishit and Vels took Fiona upstairs to their bedroom on the first floor. It was quite late, so Vels started trying to put Fiona to sleep. That's when Dishit remembered he had forgotten to turn off the parking light. He told Vels, "I'll be back in 5 minutes," and went downstairs toward the parking area. Vels continued putting Fiona to sleep, but 5 minutes passed, then 10. And suddenly, she realized Dishit hadn't come back yet. She called out his name, but there was no response. Now Vels started to panic. She quickly walked toward the stairs, ready to head downstairs. But what Vels saw next completely shook her to the core. Right at the bottom of the stairs, she saw Dishit, terrified. And when she looked closely, she realized that there was a knife pressed against his throat. Behind him stood 2 men. Since the house lights were off, Vels couldn't make out their faces properly, but one thing was clear. These men had broken in with the intent to rob. The 2 intruders forced Dishit at knife point up to the bedroom. Vels was already trembling with fear. But her mind had one clear thought: whatever they say, just do it. Let's not resist. Just stay safe. Without hesitation, she handed over all her jewelry to the thieves. She could see the fear on Dishit's face, and that made her even more panicked. Still, Vels believed that once the intruders got what they wanted, they would leave. She truly believed that. But before she could even process what was happening, the men forced her and little Fiona into the bathroom and locked the door from outside. Dishit was still outside, in their control. From inside the bathroom, Vels kept screaming, pleading, and wondering why this was happening to them. She had no idea what was going on outside. She kept trying to break free, kept praying, above all, that Dishit would be safe. Meanwhile, Dishit, still outside, was yelling, begging them, "Please let me go. I'll give you everything you want." Dishit's desperate voice, which had been echoing from outside the bathroom, suddenly went silent. And not just that, even the voices of the intruder stopped. Vels, already consumed by fear, now started panicking even more. Something was terribly wrong. She could feel it. In a desperate move, she somehow broke open the small bathroom window and stuck her head out, screaming for help. She was just hoping that someone would hear her. And someone did. Around 11:45 p.m., their neighbors heard her screams. They rushed over and entered the house. When the neighbors made it to Vels and Dishit's bedroom, they were greeted by a horrifying scene. The bed and the floor around it was soaked in blood, and lying right in the middle of it was the lifeless body of Dishit Jariwala. Dishit was no more. When Vels was finally let out of the bathroom, she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Her husband, the man she'd just had dinner with a few hours ago, the one she had laughed with, talked endlessly with during the car ride. He was gone, just like that. In a single moment, her entire world had collapsed. Dishit had left her forever. It was almost impossible for her to accept. She was completely shattered, so much so that she kept fainting over and over again. People around her tried to comfort her, tried to hold her steady. But Vels would regain consciousness only for a short while, and then pass out again. It was almost like she wanted to stay unconscious. Some even thought she was doing it intentionally. But most understood what she was going through and why. And yet, despite the horror, one question echoed in everyone's mind. Who were those 2 men? Who were those 2 intruders who did this? When the police arrived and checked the CCTV footage, it clearly showed that 2 unknown individuals had entered the house that night. And yes, they were robbers. As the police entered the house, they noticed something strange. On the kitchen floor, there was red chili powder scattered around. But it wasn't just limited to the kitchen. The same red chili powder was also found inside the bedroom. This was definitely odd. It was a weird detail, one that had no apparent connection to the murder or the burglary. Even Dishit's body had no trace of chili powder on it. Not on his skin, not on his clothes. So what was that chili powder doing there? That was the first strange clue in the house. But it was far from the only one. As the investigation progressed, more and more questions began piling up. The first big question: how did the intruders know that Dishit and Vels would be alone in the house that night? If the goal was just to rob the place, why didn't they come in the morning when no one was home? Why wait until the couple returned at night? And even if we assume they just wanted to steal, why did they only take Vels's jewelry? There were plenty of other expensive things in the house. So why just that? And then the questions only got deeper. If the intruders were really there just to rob the house, why didn't they steal Dishit's gold ring or his chain? They left those untouched. Why? If they wanted, they could have easily killed both Vels and Dishit, or tied them up and emptied the house. But they didn't. They killed only Dishit and very conveniently locked Vels and little Fiona in the bathroom, without causing them a single scratch. And when police looked around the house, it didn't even look like a robbery. It looked staged from the beginning. Now remember, Dishit went downstairs to turn off the parking light. Police found that there was a switch in the bedroom itself, a switch that controlled the same parking lights. So then, why did Dishit go all the way downstairs? Why take that extra effort? And then came another red flag. When Vels was questioned about the timing of the attack, when the intruders came in and when they left, the timeline she gave didn't match the CCTV footage. Could it be that Vels had something to do with it? But how? Because the way she reacted, she seemed to be devastated. She looked like someone who had deeply loved her husband. But then again, what we see isn't always the truth. The police were now certain that Vels might be involved. They just needed solid evidence. And then, in the CCTV footage outside the bungalow, they spotted something: a rickshaw circling Dishit's house repeatedly that night. The moment Dishit's car pulled up, the same rickshaw followed closely behind. The police tracked down the rickshaw driver, and he remembered that ride very clearly, because those two passengers were strange. They had told him, "We don't know where we're going. Just keep driving." The driver remembered their faces and gave police two names: Suketu and his driver, Dhirendra Chauhan. Now police had names, and more importantly, they had proof from CCTV and eyewitness testimony that these two had been there that night. But the real shock came next. One of them, Suketu, had a personal connection to Vels. Suketu, also known as Sonny Modi, was allegedly the son of Vels' maternal uncle, which made them cousins. And more than that, a few years ago, Vels and Suketu were in a relationship, but things didn't work out. When their families found out, they arranged Vels' marriage with Dishit. After that, the two had distanced themselves, and Suketu soon got married too. On the surface, both had moved on, adjusting to their new married lives. But was that really the truth? By now, Suketu and Vels had been keeping their distance. No communication, no connection. But then one day, they ran into each other on social media. And from there, things escalated quickly. They began chatting again, hours and hours every day, until they realized something shocking. We still love each other. But they had a problem. They were both married. And as long as Dishit was in Vels' life, there was no way forward. So, they came to one conclusion. If we want to be together, Dishit must go. Instead of asking for a divorce, which might cause shame or public drama, Vels allegedly decided that murder would be easier. And that's when the plan was set in motion. On that night, Suketu and Dhirendra waited near the bungalow. And as soon as Dishit and Vels arrived, they attacked Dishit, killed him, and staged the scene to look like a robbery. But the police needed more than just a theory. Then came the breakthrough. Dishit's Honda car was found just 1 kilometer away from the bungalow. Inside it, red chili powder, the same powder that was found in Dishit's bedroom. And more evidence followed. Vels' jewelry was found with Suketu. Dishit's phone was found with Dhirendra. And the police had witnesses, including the rickshaw driver who dropped Suketu and Dhirendra at the bungalow that night. With all this, police were confident justice was near. But they were very wrong. On June 30th, 2006, police arrested Vels, Suketu, and Dhirendra. But in court, the case took a shocking twist. Vels denied recognizing the jewelry, claiming it wasn't hers. And the rickshaw driver retracted his statement, saying he wasn't sure if the men he saw were Suketu and Durendra. The police had a total of 108 witnesses. Yet, just 3 years later, all 3 accused were set free. I know many of you expected a happy ending in this case, but sadly, that's not how it ended. Today, these 3 are living freely, continuing their lives as usual. But for Dishit's family, it was a huge loss. They lost a very promising and loving son. Fiona lost her loving father. Dishit was kind of like a perfect guy. He cared deeply for his family, loved his children, loved his wife, and loved his parents. To be honest, he didn't really deserve what happened. This case shows one thing very clearly. If Vels had just asked for a divorce, Dishit, being smart and understanding, probably would have agreed, and the whole tragedy could have been avoided. But Vels didn't do that, because asking for divorce would have tarnished her and her family's reputation, and she did not want that. So this is where the Dishit Jariwala case ends. Before you go, if you like true crime documentaries, please subscribe.